The ship was dying. Captain knew this the moment she heard the third explosion rock through the hull. Sparks flew from the control panel. Smoke filled the small cockpit. Warning lights flashed red everywhere she looked. "Come on," she whispered to her ship, "just a little more." But the Wayfinder had nothing left to give. The engines failed completely. The small scout vessel fell from the sky like a stone dropped into water, gripped her seat and closed her eyes. She thought of Earth. She thought of her mother's garden. She thought of the ocean she would never see again. The crash was violent. Metal screamed against rock, glass shattered, world became darkness. She woke to silence. Her body ached everywhere. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead. She tried to move, but pain shot through her left leg. Broken, probably. She looked around the destroyed cockpit. The Wayfinder would never fly again. Pulled herself to the emergency supplies. Water, food for maybe 10 days, a medical kit, a distress beacon that she activated immediately. But she knew the truth. She was too far from human space. The signal was too weak. No one would hear her cry for help. She crawled out of the wreckage and looked at the world around her. It was a moon, barren and gray. Rocks stretched in every direction. The sky was dark purple, filled with strange stars she did not recognize. 2 gas giants hung in the sky, massive and beautiful and completely alien. Was alone. She was going to die here. 3 days passed. Her water was running low. The radiation from the planet's dying sun was making her sick. Red burns appeared on her arms and face. She grew weaker with each hour. On the 3rd night, she stopped looking at the sky for rescue ships. She wrote a message on her personal recorder for anyone who might find her body someday. "My name is Captain, Earth Naval Forces. I died on this moon far from home. I hope someone remembers me." She closed her eyes and waited for the end. The sound woke her. A soft humming like music coming from somewhere nearby. Opened her eyes and saw lights approaching through the darkness. Not human lights. These were soft, golden, pulsing like heartbeats. Fear gripped her chest. She had no weapon. She could not run. Whatever was coming, she would have to face it. The creatures that emerged from the darkness were unlike anything had ever seen. They stood on 6 legs. Their bodies were covered in hard shells that shimmered like oil on water. Their heads were round, with large eyes that glowed amber in the darkness. They had 4 arms, delicate and graceful. Insects thought, giant insects. There were 5 of them. They stopped a short distance from her and made sounds to each other, clicks and whistles and soft humming. They were talking, realized, discussing her. One of them stepped forward. It was larger than the others, with a shell that had turned gray with age. It looked at with those strange, glowing eyes. Then it did something that shocked her completely. It knelt down and extended one of its hands toward her. The gesture was gentle, careful, non-threatening. "You are hurt," the creature said. Its voice was strange, clicking between words, but understood it perfectly. A translator device hung around its neck. "We will help you." Felt tears forming in her eyes. "Who are you?" "I am Elder of the. We found your broken sky vessel. We came to see if anyone survived." The creature tilted its head. "You are alone." "Yes," whispered, "I am alone." Turned to the others and spoke in that clicking language. They moved quickly, bringing containers and tools from their own vessel. Saw them examining her ship, shaking their heads at the damage. One of them approached with a small device and scanned her body. "Your leg is broken," said. "The star sickness is in your blood. You will die without help." The elder paused. "We can save you, but it will cost us much. Our supplies are limited. Our medicine is precious." Shook her head. "I cannot ask you to do that. You do not know me. I am nothing to you." Made a sound that thought might be laughter. "You are a living being who is suffering. That is enough." The elder gestured to the others. "Bring the healing compounds. We will treat her burns first." A younger approached. She was smaller than the others, with a shell that shimmered blue and green. She carried a container of thick paste and began applying it to burned skin. The relief was immediate. The pain faded like a bad dream. "Why?" asked her voice breaking. "Why are you helping me? You gain nothing from this." Sat beside her, moving slowly as old creatures do. "Many years ago, when I was young, my vessel crashed on a distant world. I was alone and afraid. A creature I had never seen before found me. It could have killed me. It could have ignored me. Instead, it brought me food and water until my people came for me." The elder's eyes glowed softly. "Kindness requires no reason, Captain. You were dying. We could help. That is enough." She wept for the kindness of strangers. She wept for the gift of her life being returned to her. They worked for 7 days. They repaired her ship using parts from their own vessel, parts they could not easily replace. Gave rare medicine from her personal supplies, medicine meant for her own future children. Stayed by side, teaching her about and learning about humans in return. On the 7th day, the Wayfinder was ready to fly again, stood before and his people. She removed the pin from her uniform, a silver bird with spread wings, the symbol of Earth's Navy. "Take this," she said, pressing it into his hands, "so you will remember me." "We will remember," promised. "Looked at, my people will hear of this. They will know what you did for me. And someday, if you ever need help, humanity will come. I swear it." Touched his hand gently. "Go home, Captain, live well. That is all the payment we need." Boarded her ship and flew into the stars. She looked back at the barren moon until it disappeared from view. She carried with her a gift greater than her own life. She carried a debt of honor that she would never forget. And she would make sure humanity remembered too. 20 years had passed since the barren moon was no longer a young captain with dreams of exploration. She was admiral now, one of the most respected officers in Earth's Navy. Her hair had turned gray. Lines marked her face, but her eyes still held the same fire they had on the day she nearly died. She never forgot not for a single day. Stood before the United Earth Council, the most powerful group of leaders humanity had ever assembled. They sat in a great hall, surrounded by screens showing the vastness of human space. 12 colony worlds now flew the flag of Earth. Humanity was growing. Humanity was becoming strong. "Council members," began, her voice steady and clear, "I am here to speak of a debt." The council members shifted in their seats. They were busy people with busy schedules. They had wars to plan and treaties to sign. They did not have time for old stories. But continued anyway. She told them everything: the crash, the dying, the strange insect creatures who emerged from the darkness to save her life. She describes kindness and sacrifice. She spoke of medicine given freely and ship parts donated without question. She painted a picture of a gentle species that asked for nothing in return for everything. "They saved my life," said. "They could have walked away. They could have left me to die on that rock, but they chose kindness instead. They chose to help a stranger." She paused and looked at each council member in turn. "I made them a promise. I told them that humanity would remember. I told them that if they ever needed help, we would come." The council leader, a tall man with cold eyes, leaned forward. "Admiral, we respect your service. We honor your sacrifice. But they are a small species on the far edge of explored space. They have nothing to offer us. No resources, no technology, no strategic value." He spread his hands. "What would you have us do? Send ships to protect a species that cannot help us in return?" Felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. "I would have us keep our word. I would have us show the galaxy that humanity honors its debts. I would have us prove that kindness is not forgotten." The council voted. The result was not what wanted. No ships would be sent. No alliance would be formed. They were too far away, too unimportant, too insignificant to matter. Left the hall with her head held high. She had lost this battle, but she would not lose the war. She went to the Naval Academy, where young officers trained to become the future of humanity's fleet. She stood before a room of eager cadets and told them her story. She watched their eyes widen as she described the glowing amber eyes of the. She saw them lean forward as she spoke of kindness in the darkness. "Remember this name," she told them. "Say it with me." The cadets repeated. "They saved my life. They asked for nothing, and someday they may need us. When that day comes, I want you to remember. I want you to answer." Told her story again and again. She told it to admirals and captains. She told it to engineers and pilots. She told it to anyone who would listen. Some laughed at her, some called her foolish, but many listened, many remembered. She created a special file in the naval database. She called it the Remembrance Protocol. Inside, she placed every detail of her rescue, the coordinates of the language patterns she had learned from, the promise she had made. She gave access to this file to officers she trusted, officers who understood the meaning of honor. "Pass this on," she instructed them. "When I am gone, give it to someone who will keep the watch. Never let it die. Never let humanity forget." Years passed, grew older. Her body weakened while her spirit remained strong. She wrote her story in a book that was read by millions. She spoke at ceremonies and gatherings. The name spread through humanity like seeds carried by the wind. On her 80th birthday, received a visitor. Commander David was a young officer with serious eyes and a quiet voice. He had read her book as a child. He had chosen his career because of her story. "Admiral," he said, kneeling beside her bed, "I want to continue your work. I want to keep the watch." Smiled, her hand, thin and wrinkled, reached out to touch his face. "Why, David? Why does it matter to you?" "Because you taught me something," David replied. "You taught me that the measure of a species is not its strength or its power. The measure of a species is how it treats those who cannot fight back, how it remembers those who showed kindness." He paused. "They helped us when we were weak. Now we are strong. What we do with that strength defines who we are." Felt peace wash over her. She had chosen well. "Take the protocol," she said. "Pass it to those you trust. Watch over them from afar. And when they call for help, because someday they will, make sure humanity answers." David took her hand. "I swear it." Died 3 days later. She was buried with full military honors. Thousands attended her funeral, but the most important people there were not the admirals or politicians. They were the quiet officers who carried a secret in their hearts, a promise, a duty, a debt that would not be forgotten. David rose through the ranks. He became a captain, then a commodore, then an admiral. He trained others to keep the watch. He added new information to the protocol as humanity's long-range sensors grew stronger. He could see the worlds now, 3 small planets orbiting a yellow sun. He watched them live their peaceful lives, never knowing that human eyes were watching over them. Before his own death, David passed the protocol to a young commander named Sarah. Before her death, Sarah passed it to another, and another, and another. 60 years after his rescue, the Remembrance Protocol had been carried by 7 different keepers. Each one had added to it. Each one had strengthened it. Each one had believed in the promise. The galaxy changed around them. Empires rose and fell. Wars were fought and won. Humanity grew into a great power, respected and feared throughout known space. Other species whispered about humans in wonder and worry. They said humans were stubborn. They said humans were fierce. They said humans had memories that stretched across generations. They had no idea how right they were. On the far edge of human space, a young communications officer received a strange signal one night. It was weak and broken, coming from somewhere very far away. She almost ignored it, but then she heard a word that made her blood run cold. Yep. She had heard that word before. Her grandmother had been a naval officer. Her grandmother had told her stories about a promise made long ago, a debt that humanity owed to strange insect creatures who had saved a lost captain. The officer sat up straight in her chair. She began tracing the signal to its source, and in her chest something stirred, something that had been sleeping for 80 years. The watch was about to end. The time for action had finally come. The decades passed like water flowing through a river. Time touched everything and changed everything, but some things remained the same. On Prime, the seasons turned in their endless cycle. The amber forests bloomed and faded. Generations were born, lived their peaceful lives, and returned to the earth. The gentle species continued their quiet existence, trading with nearby worlds, studying the stars, and raising their young with care and love. Elder passed away 30 years after he saved the human captain. His death was mourned across all three worlds. He was remembered as wise and kind, as brave and gentle. But his greatest act of kindness, saving the strange, soft-skinned creature on the barren moon, was known only to those closest to him. His daughter kept the memory alive. She had been young when she gave her medicine to heal the human's burns. Now she was old, her shell faded to pale gray, her movements slow and careful. She became a matriarch of her clan, a keeper of stories and wisdom. In her private chamber kept a small box. Inside the box was a metal pin shaped like a bird with spread wings. Gift would hold it sometimes, turning it in her hands, remembering the strange creature who had wept when they saved her life. "Tell us the story again, grandmother," the young ones would beg. And would tell them. She would describe the crashed vessel and the dying human inside. She would speak of her father's decision to help, even though it cost them precious supplies. She would imitate the strange sounds of human speech and make the young ones laugh. "The human made a promise," would say. "She said her people would remember. She said they would come if we ever needed help." "Do you believe her, grandmother?" a young one asked once. Was quiet for a long moment. "I believe she meant it when she said it, but humans are strange creatures. They live short lives and have short memories. 80 years have passed. The one we saved is probably dead. Her people have probably forgotten." "That is sad," the young one said. "Perhaps," agreed, "but we did not save her to receive payment. We saved her because it was right. Kindness needs no reward. That is what my father taught me. That is what I teach you." The young ones nodded and scattered to their games, sat alone with the metal pin in her hands, and wondered if it ever made it home. Far across the galaxy, humanity was changing. The species that had once struggled to reach the stars now commanded vast fleets. Human colonies spread across dozens of worlds. Human ships patrolled trade routes and protected borders. Human ambassadors sat in the halls of the Galactic Council, speaking with confidence and authority. Other species watched humanity's rise with mixed feelings. Some were impressed by human determination and creativity. Some were frightened by human aggression and stubbornness. All of them agreed on one thing: humans were not to be underestimated. Stories spread through the galaxy about human behavior. Strange stories, confusing stories. There was the story of the miners who cheated a human trading company. Humans had spent 12 years tracking them down, crossing half the galaxy to collect a debt that any other species would have forgotten. There was the story of the diplomat who insulted a human captain in public. That captain's grandson had returned 50 years later to demand an apology from the diplomat's descendants. There was the story of the Anthropic Research Station, where humans had built a memorial to a single scientist who died in an accident. They still placed flowers there every year, 100 years later. "What is wrong with these creatures?" other species would ask. "Why do they remember everything? Why can they not let go of the past?" The answer was simple, though few understood it. Humans remembered because remembering was part of who they were. They carried their history with them like stones in their pockets. They honored their dead and celebrated their heroes. They kept promises made by their ancestors and expected others to do the same. This made them wonderful friends. It also made them terrible enemies. In the dark spaces between stars, another species was watching. The Dominion had built an empire through conquest and fear. They were reptilian creatures, tall and strong, with scales like armor and teeth like knives. They respected only power. They understood only strength. The Dominion had conquered 30 worlds in the last century. They enslaved entire populations to work in their mines and factories. They stripped planets of resources and moved on, leaving nothing but ruin behind them. Now they looked at the map of known space and saw 3 small worlds near the edge of their territory. 3 worlds rich in rare minerals and clean water. 3 worlds defended by a weak species that had no military and no allies. The warlord, supreme commander of the Dominion's expansion fleet, studied the reports with pleasure. "These insects will be easy prey," he said to his officers. "They have no weapons. They have no protectors. The Galactic Council considers them too insignificant to defend." "Should we offer them terms of surrender?" an officer asked. Laughed a harsh sound like rocks grinding together. "Why waste words? We will take what we want. If they resist, we will destroy them. If they submit, we will enslave them. Either way, their worlds belong to us now." The Dominion fleet began to gather. Hundreds of warships assembled in the darkness, their engines humming with power, their weapons primed for destruction. They had no idea what was coming. On Prime, Matriarch woke from a troubled sleep. She had dreamed of fire falling from the sky. She had dreamed of her people screaming. She had dreamed of the end of everything. She walked to her window and looked up at the peaceful stars. Somewhere out there, among those distant lights, was a world called Earth. A world where a species called humans lived and grew and conquered. Did they remember? After all these years, after all this time, did anyone remember the promise made on that barren moon? Held the metal pin against her chest. It was cold in her hands, cold and small and meaningless. "You promised," she whispered to the stars. "You said you would come." The stars did not answer. 3 months later, the fleet emerged from hyperspace above Prime. The sky filled with enemy ships, so many that they blocked out the sun. They looked up in terror as the shadow of death fell across their world. The message from Warlord was brief and brutal. "Surrender or die. You have 1 day to decide." The Galactic Council was contacted. They expressed sympathy but offered no help. They were too powerful. They were too weak. No one would risk war for such an insignificant species. Gathered the leaders of her people. They sat in a circle, their amber eyes dim with fear and despair. They had no weapons. They had no allies. They had no hope. "There is one thing we can try," said slowly. "One last chance." She told them about the human, about the promise, about the coordinates she had kept secret for 80 years. "It is foolish," one leader said. "The humans have forgotten us. They do not care about insects on the edge of space." "Probably," agreed, "but we have nothing left to lose." That night, sat at a communications terminal and recorded a message. She spoke in the human language that had taught her, her voice clicking between unfamiliar sounds. "To the humans, to anyone who remembers, the face extinction, we ask for nothing, we expect nothing. But if the one we saved long ago ever spoke of us, please help us." She sent the message into the void and waited. The stars remained silent. But far across the galaxy, on a lonely listening post at the edge of human space, a young officer was about to hear something that would change everything. The listening post was small and cold. It floated in the darkness at the very edge of human space, far from the busy trade routes and crowded colonies. Only 3 officers served there, monitoring signals from the unknown regions of the galaxy. It was boring work. Nothing ever happened. Until tonight. Lieutenant Maya Torres sat at her console fighting to stay awake. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago. The screens showed nothing but static and distant star noise. Another quiet night, another waste of time. Then a signal appeared. Maya sat up straight, her tiredness forgotten. The signal was weak and broken, coming from very far away. It was not a natural phenomenon. Someone was transmitting. She cleaned up the signal and listened. A voice emerged from the static, strange and clicking. speaking in accented but clear English. To the humans, to anyone who remembers, the face extinction. Maya's heart stopped. She knew that name. Her grandmother had served under Admiral Sarah, who had served under Admiral David, who had learned from Admiral herself. Maya had grown up hearing stories about the gentle insect creatures who saved a human life and asked for nothing in return. The message continued. We ask for nothing, we expect nothing, but if the one we saved long ago ever spoke of us, please help us. Maya's hands were shaking as she traced the signal to its source. 3 planets near the edge of explored space, and near those planets, a massive fleet of ships that did not belong there. Ships. Maya activated the emergency communication channel. She entered a code that had been passed down through 7 generations of naval officers, a code that most people had forgotten existed. The Remembrance Protocol. The message traveled through hyperspace relays at the speed of light. It reached Earth in 6 hours. It reached Fleet Admiral in 7. Admiral was a small woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had commanded ships in 3 wars. She had never lost a battle. She was respected by her friends and feared by her enemies. She read the protocol file in silence. She saw its original testimony. She saw the chain of commanders who had kept watch for 80 years. She listened to the desperate message from clicking and broken but perfectly clear. Please help us. Admiral stood and walked to her window. Outside, the lights of Earth's capital city stretched to the horizon. Billions of humans lived their lives below, unaware of the distant tragedy unfolding at the edge of space. The easy choice was to do nothing. They were far away. They had no strategic value. Helping them would mean war with the Dominion, a powerful enemy with a vast fleet. Many humans would die. But had made a promise, and promises meant something. Admiral called an emergency meeting of the United Earth Defense Council, the same council that had refused requests 60 years ago. Different people sat in the chairs now. Different faces looked at her with confusion and impatience. Admiral, what is the meaning of this? The council leader asked. We were told this was urgent. It is, said. She played message for them. She showed them the protocol file. She told them the story of and they from beginning to end. 80 years ago, these creatures saved one of our own, concluded. They gave everything they had to help a stranger. Now they face extinction. That will destroy them if we do not act. The council chamber was silent. Admiral, a council member said slowly, you are asking us to go to war, for insects, on the far side of the galaxy. I am asking us to keep our word, replied. I am asking us to show the galaxy what humanity is made of. Another council member shook his head. The fleet is enormous. We would need to send everything we have. And for what? Honor, pride, a promise made by a dead woman. His eyes blazed. A promise made by Admiral is a promise made by humanity. She spoke for all of us when she swore that we would remember. Do you want to tell the galaxy that human promises mean nothing? Do you want every species out there to know that we abandon our friends when things get difficult? The debate continued for hours. Voices rose and fell. Arguments flew back and forth. Some council members spoke of duty and honor. Others spoke of risk and cost. Finally, the council leader raised his hand for silence. We will vote, he said. Those in favor of military intervention. 12 hands rose into the air. Every single council member felt tears forming in her eyes, but she held them back. There would be time for emotion later. Now there was work to do. Mobilize the 3rd and 7th combined fleets, she ordered. Every ship we can spare. I want them ready to move in 48 hours. Admiral and aide asked, what should we tell the crews? Why are we going to war? Smiled. It was a fierce smile, the smile of a warrior going into battle. Tell them the truth. Tell them that 80 years ago, someone helped us. Tell them that we remember. Tell them that we are going to show the galaxy what it means to have humanity as a friend." The message spread through the fleet like wildfire. It traveled from ship to ship, from crew to crew. Soldiers who had never heard of the learned their story. Engineers who had never seen in species felt their hearts stir with purpose. "They helped us," the crews said to each other. "Now we help them." 412 ships assembled in formation, dreadnoughts the size of cities, carriers filled with fighter craft, destroyers bristling with weapons, cruisers and frigates and support vessels, all flying the flag of Earth. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever gathered for a single operation. Admiral stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Remembrance. She had named it herself, years ago, for reasons she had never explained. Now everyone understood. "All ships report ready," she commanded. The confirmations came in. 412 voices, 412 ships, 412 crews ready to fight and die for a species they had never met. "Set course for Prime," ordered, "maximum speed." The fleet jumped into hyperspace. Stars stretched into lines of light. The darkness between worlds rushed past like water. On Prime, the bombardment had begun. Ships rained fire upon the planet. Cities burned. Forests fell. The huddled in underground shelters, listening to the thunder of destruction above. Matriarch held the metal pin in her hands, the pin shaped like a bird with spread wings. Gift, the only proof that the promise had ever been made. "They are not coming," a young said, his voice thick with despair. "No one is coming to save us." Closed her eyes. Perhaps the young one was right. Perhaps the humans had forgotten. Perhaps she had been foolish to hope. But somewhere in her heart, a small flame still burned. A flame lit by a dying human on a barren moon 80 years ago. A flame that refused to go out. "We wait," said, "we hope, we believe." Above the planet, the fleet continued its destruction. Warlord watched with satisfaction. Soon this world would belong to the Dominion. Soon these pathetic insects would bow before him. He had no idea that 412 ships were racing toward him through hyperspace. He had no idea that humanity was coming. And humanity did not forget. Warlord stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Dominion's Wrath. Through the great windows, he watched fire rain down upon Prime. Smoke rose from burning cities. Forests that had stood for 1,000 years became ashes in minutes. It was beautiful in its way, the beauty of absolute power. "The insects refused to surrender," his second-in-command reported. "They have retreated to underground shelters." "Increase the bombardment," ordered. "Dig them out like the vermin they are." He felt no guilt. They were weak. Weakness deserved to be crushed. That was the way of the universe. That was the truth the Dominion had proven across 30 conquered worlds. His sensor officer suddenly made a strange sound. It was almost like a scream. "Warlord," the officer said, his voice shaking. "Something is happening." "What do you mean?" demanded. Before the officer could answer, the sky tore open. 412 ships burst out of hyperspace in perfect formation. They appeared from nothing, filling the void with steel and fire. Dreadnoughts the size of mountains, carriers with hungry bays, destroyers with weapons already hot and ready. Human ships, hundreds of them, more warships than had ever seen in one place. For a moment the commander could not speak, could not think, could not understand what he was seeing. Then a transmission overrode every communication channel in the system, every ship, every shelter, every speaker and screen for millions of kilometers. A human face appeared, a woman small and gray-haired with eyes like cold stars. "Attention forces," she said. "I am Fleet Admiral of the United Earth Navy. 80 years ago, they saved a single stranded human. She was lost and dying. They found her and healed her. They gave their own supplies to repair her ship. They asked for nothing in return." His voice hardened into iron. "That human made them a promise. She told them that if they ever needed help, humanity would come. She told them that we would remember. The Admiral leaned forward, her face filling every screen. Humanity remembers. They are under our protection now. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system. If you remain, we will demonstrate what happens to those who threaten our friends. Your time starts now. The transmission ended. Warlord stared at his second-in-command stared at him. The entire bridge crew waited in frozen silence. Then began to laugh. 400 ships against 800, he roared. These humans are mad. They fly across the galaxy to protect insects, for a promise made by a dead woman. He slammed his fist against his chair. All ships, attack formation. We will crush these fools and add their worlds to our empire. The fleet turned to face the humans, 800 warships against 400. The numbers were clear. The outcome was certain. Or so believed. Admiral watched the ships move into attack position. She felt no fear. She had commanded ships in 3 wars. She had seen death many times. She was ready. Admiral, her tactical officer said, they outnumber us 2 to 1. I am aware, replied. They are not retreating. They mean to fight. Good. Smile was thin and dangerous. Humanity came here to send a message. Not just to those, but to every species watching. If we win easily, the message will be clear. What message is that, Admiral? Looked out at the stars. Somewhere behind her on the burned surface of Prime, the gentle insect creatures were waiting, hopping, believing. The message, she said, is this. If you help humanity, humanity will never forget. We will come for you across any distance. We will fight for you against any enemy. We will stand with you until the end of time itself. She turned to face her crew. All ships engage. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships moved with perfect coordination, dancing between enemy fire, striking weak points with deadly accuracy. 80 years of military advancement had made humanity's fleet the most advanced in known space. They had numbers, but humans had technology, training, and something else. They had purpose. Every human soldier knew why they were fighting. They fought for a promise made by a dead woman on a barren moon. They fought for gentle creatures who had shown kindness to a stranger. They fought to prove that honor and gratitude still meant something in a cold and heartless universe. That purpose made them unstoppable. Ships exploded one after another. Their formation broke apart. Their weapons missed targets that seemed to know exactly where they would fire. Within the first 3 minutes, 50 vessels were destroyed. Within 5 minutes, 100. Within 10 minutes, 250. Warlord screamed orders that no one could follow. His fleet was falling apart around him. Ships fled in all directions. Crews abandoned their posts. The mighty Dominion, conqueror of 30 worlds, was being shattered by an enemy half their size. This is impossible, roared. They are only humans, weak, soft creatures. How are they doing this? The answer came in another transmission. Admiral's face appeared one final time. Warlord, your fleet is broken. Your conquest has failed. I offer you one chance to survive. Retreat now. Take your remaining ships and leave. Never return to this system. Never threaten thee again. Her eyes burned with cold fire. If you refuse, I will destroy every last ship you have, and then I will come for you. Looked at his tactical display. 400 of his ships remained. 400 against an enemy that had barely lost 20. The battle had lasted 11 minutes. 11 minutes to break the Dominion's power. For the first time in his life, Warlord felt true fear. Not fear of death, fear of something worse. Fear of an enemy that would cross the galaxy to protect strangers. Fear of a species that kept promises for 80 years. Fear of the cold, patient, unstoppable force called humanity. All ships, he said, his voice broken, retreat. The fleet fled into hyperspace. They left behind the wreckage of 400 ships and the ruins of their pride. Humanity had won. On the surface of Prime, the shelters fell silent. The thunder of bombardment had stopped. Matriarch and her people waited in the darkness, afraid to hope. Then a new sound came through the communication system, a human voice. "Attention, this is the United Earth Navy. The fleet has been destroyed. You are safe. We are sending medical ships and supplies. Please remain calm. Help is coming." Felt her legs give way. She sank to the ground, clutching the metal pin in her hands. Around her, her people wept and laughed and held each other. They had been saved. She walked out of the shelter on shaking legs. The sky above was filled with human ships, but they were not weapons of destruction. They were carrying doctors and medicine, cargo vessels bringing food and building materials, a fleet of mercy descending from the stars. A small transport landed nearby. The doors opened and human soldiers emerged, their weapons lowered, their hands open in peace. They carried crates marked with medical symbols. A young officer approached. He was tall and dark-skinned, with kind eyes that reminded her of someone she could not quite remember. He knelt before her and presented a small box. "Matriarch," he said softly, "my name is Lieutenant. My great-great-grandmother was the one you saved." His eyes went wide. "The captain?" "Yes." Opened the box. Inside was a medal bearing the symbol, a circle of amber light. Beside it was a letter, old and yellow with age. "My ancestor left this letter to be delivered to your people when we finally came. She wrote it before she died, 70 years ago." Took the letter with trembling hands. She unfolded it and read the simple words written inside. "Dear friends, if you are reading this, then you needed help and my people came. I knew they would. I knew they would not forget. Thank you for saving my life. Thank you for teaching me that kindness matters. Thank you for believing in us. Humanity will always remember what you did, and we will always, always protect you, with love and gratitude." Looked up at the sky, at the hundreds of human ships orbiting her world, at the soldiers rushing to help her people, at the young man kneeling before her, the great-great-grandson of the woman she had healed so long ago. "You came," she whispered. "After all these years, you remembered." Smiled. "Of course we remembered. Humanity never forgets its friends." Reached out and touched his face just as had touched her father's face 80 years ago. The circle was complete. The debt was paid. The promise was kept. "Thank you," said. "Thank you all." High above, Admiral stood on the bridge of the UES Remembrance and watched the rescue operations unfold. Her officers cheered and celebrated around her. They had won a great victory. They had sent a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations. But was not thinking about victory. She was thinking about a young captain who crashed on a barren moon, dying and alone. She was thinking about strange creatures who chose kindness over indifference. She was thinking about a promise that had survived 80 years and crossed the stars. "Admiral," her first officer said, "the galaxy is watching. Every species in known space saw what we did today. They know now what it means to have humanity as a friend." Nodded slowly. "And as an enemy, the will remember, others will too." She looked out at the stars, at the vast and endless universe where so many species lived and died and were forgotten. "Let them remember," she said. "Let them all remember. If you show kindness to humanity, we will cross the universe to repay you. If you threaten those we love, we will break your fleets and burn your empires." She smiled, and there was something ancient and fierce in that smile. That is the lesson of today. That is the message we send to the stars. Far below, on the surface of Prime, sat among her people and watched the humans work. They moved with purpose and care, helping injured, sharing food, repairing damaged buildings. They asked for nothing in return. Held the metal pin in her hands, the bird with spread wings, gift. "You were right to believe in them," she whispered to her father's memory. "You were right all along." The sun set over Prime, but for the first time in days the darkness held no fear, because humanity was watching. Humanity was protecting, and humanity never forgot. The debt was repaid. The promise was kept. And somewhere in the stars, the spirit of smiled.